Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing the team that helped me climb to Legend rank in Season 13 of Go Battle League. Now this team is a team that I have featured on the channel before, and it's in the Ultra Holiday Cup. On the lead, we're running Stone Edge Virizion. As the safe switch, I have Walrein, and as the closer, I have Aurorus. I ran this team for 7 sets, had an 80% win rate, and was able to climb all the way up to Legend rank. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and check out my Legend team in action in the Ultra Holiday Cup. Hopping to the first match, leading Virizion into Shadow Magnezone, an incredibly good lead for me. My opponent is going to immediately save switch into Shadow Gliscor, and we have an incredibly good response available with Walrein. I'm going to strike first, firing off the Icicle Spear, and my opponent is going to commit the shield. So my opponent is going to try and get shields down, and I'm more than happy to let that happen. They bait with a Night Slash, pretty nice bait by them. I continue to farm, and this is only another Night Slash, so I am going to let this go. Night Slash, not going to do a whole lot, but then they do get the boost. I do not want to take any chances, and I'm going to fire off the Icicle Spear and get the KO. My opponent is going to send back in the Shadow Magnezone. Magnezone is farming up, and they're going to fire off a move. I'm hoping that they go for the Mirror Shot, and I'm able to survive it, but I am barely taken out. I'm going to send in Virizion in the back. They have Charizard, and we have the perfect alignment needed to win this game. Ultra League Aurorus is extremely tanky. It's able to tank a Blast Burn with relative ease. I fire off the Meteor Beam. Meteor Beam is able to grab a shield. My opponent is going to fire off a charge move. They go for the Blast Burn, and even my poor IV Aurorus is able to tank it. I'm going to fire off the Weather Ball here. Weather Ball will get some nice chip damage and put them into a range where a Sacred Sword is going to be enough to KO. I'm going to commit the shield. I'm basically just going to force them to empty their energy. And now I should even be able to double kick down with Virizion and get a pretty comfortable win. Virizion not quite able to double kick down as my opponent sends back in the Shadow Magnezone. Sacred Sword is going to hurt, nearly getting rid of the Magnezone. Magnezone will fire off a last second charge move. It's a wild charge. We hang on, we farm down the Magnezone, and we leave with the Sacred Sword loaded for the 1 HP Charizard. Down goes the Zard, and that is a good game. Moving into the next match, and we've got a mirror lead Virizion into Virizion. I will stay in this matchup to start, as my backline is pretty weak to an opposing Virizion. So I'm going to stay in here, try and get them low, and then I may eventually look to save switch into my Walrein. I'm able to strike first with the Sacred Sword. I go for Sacred Sword number 2, but I actually lose CMP. That is a bit surprising, as I do run a pretty attack-weighted Virizion, so pretty suboptimal Ultra League IVs. Looks like my opponents might be even worse. I'm going to fire off another Sacred Sword. They are at the back-to-back moves now. I'm going to let this through, and then I'm actually going to bank a move, save switch into Walrein, and my opponent has a very similar idea, as we have a simultaneous save switch, Walrein into Jellicent. Jellicent is going to strike first, firing off the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to land, and I'm going to return fire with the Earthquake. Earthquake will definitely add up in this matchup. Jellicent is going to let that through. Jellicent continuing to farm. Jellicent is going to fire off another Shadow Ball. This Shadow Ball will come very close to knocking out. Walrein barely able to hang on and reach the last second Earthquake. That is huge. Earthquake gets them low, and Walrein is able to farm down. In the back, my opponent has Shadow Magneton, so I'm very happy I saved Virizion, but this Magneton is an absolute nightmare for my Aurorus. I'm going to continue to farm up here. My opponent is going to fire off a Magnet Bomb. The thing I have to be mindful of is a potential snipe with my opponent's Virizion, and that's exactly what they go for. I fire off the Sacred Sword, and they end up catching onto their own Virizion, but they shield, and it ends up somehow being a CMP tie. Honestly, that's fine by me. I'm just going to let Virizion go, and I'm just going to send in Aurorus. Aurorus is able to get the farm down, and now Magneton is low enough where a resisted Meteor Beam should do enough damage. Meteor Beam takes down the Magneton as we're able to survive. Great lead in the next match, Virizion into Shadow Alolan Sandslash. My opponent is going to save switch into Giratina, and this is a team that I have seen quite a lot over the last 2 days, and that is Alolan Sandslash, Dragon Breath Giratina, and Charm Alolan Ninetales in the back, and that's an incredibly good team for my team to see. Reason being is we basically just hard counter it. I'm able to comfortably tank an Ancient Power, overfarm, fire off the Icicle Spear, and the Giratina is not going to be able to force a shield unless they themselves decide to commit a shield. My opponent is going to send back in the Alolan Sandslash. Sandslash is going to try and go for a farm down, so I'm actually going to bait. I want to try and entice them to throw energy. They commit the shield. My opponent is able to get the farm down, as unfortunately I was not able to reach the earthquake despite baiting. They're going to fire off an Ice Punch. Ice Punch does do quite a lot of damage, but I'm able to tank it. I'm going to farm up one more double kick. They go for Ice Punch number 2. I commit the shield, and I'm going to fire off this Sacred Sword. I want to try and KO or grab the final shield. I'm able to grab the final shield. They're firing off another Ice Punch, and I will commit my final shield as well. I just have to watch for a potential catch. In comes the Ninetales, and Aurorus is in an incredibly good spot here. Aurorus should be able to overfarm quite a bit in this matchup. Meteor Beam for the KO, and leave with energy. So I'm going to farm up 2 Powder Snows, and then fire off the Meteor Beam. Meteor Beam is going to be getting rid of the Ninetales. Back in comes the Sand Slash. Sand Slash has to try and farm down, but Aurorus says no. Meteor Beam takes out the Sand Slash, and that is a good game. Picking up a very tough lead in the next match, Virizion into Venusaur. I'm going to save switch into Walrein. My opponent is going to respond with Jellicent. This is a fairly neutral matchup on paper, but I would definitely give the edge to Jellicent here. I'm going to strike first, going straight for the Earthquake, and my opponent does commit a shield. Honestly, that is fine by me. I'm basically just going to take shield advantage here. My opponent will fire off the Shadow Ball. That does quite a bit of damage. And now I'm just going to try and reach another Earthquake, which I'm barely able to get to. This Earthquake will get them below half health, and honestly, that's perfect for me. They overfarm a bit more, fire off the Shadow Ball, and I'm just going to let this through. As now, I've gotten my shield advantage, and hopefully, since they brought a Jellicent into Walrein, that means they don't have a fighter in the back, so hopefully Aurorus can sweep here. They fire off the Shadow Ball. I'm going to let that through. I'm going to overfarm quite a bit and then fire off the Stone Edge on what should be the CMP tied to their next charge move. This Stone Edge is going to KO, and now I have some energy and a shield advantage, so I can get some damage off on the Venusaur. I'm going to fire off the Stone Edge. This should do about half their health, and then I can send in Aurorus, and in the back, they have Obstagoon, so my opponent read the team. This is not good. Obstagoon fires off the Night Slash, it connects, and they get the boost as well. Things going from bad to worse. I fire off the Meteor Beam, they let it through, and my opponent is able to counter down. I'm going to send in Virizion, and I just have to try and double kick down the Obstagoon and hope that I'm able to get rid of this Venusaur. I'm on very low HP. In comes the Venusaur. Venusaur, at this point, can just go straight Frenzy Plant. They're going to fire off the Frenzy Plant. I will commit the shield, throw one more double kick, and then I'm going to bait. This is my only win con here. Baiting with the Sacred Sword. It gets the shield, and I go straight for the Stone Edge. Is this going to be enough to KO? Stone Edge does not. We double kick down and clutch an improbable win. Tough leads continue in the next match, Virizion into Pidgeot. I'm going to throw one double kick, save switch into Walrein, and my opponent responds with their own Virizion. Honestly, this is a pretty decent spot for Walrein to be in, as with a small energy lead, I can force a shield in this matchup. So I'm going to fire off the Icicle Spear right away. Icicle Spear is able to land. I'm going to farm up and barely be able to outpace and reach Icicle Spear number 2. In order to keep switch advantage, they have to give me a shield. And this is everything that the team is built to do. As now I have shield advantage, I can double kick all the way down with Virizion and leave with a Stone Edge, which means I can threaten that Pidgeot with super effective damage. Sacred Sword is going to land. I'm able to get the full farm down, and I leave with so much energy. In comes Pidgeot. I just throw right away, going for the Stone Edge. Stone Edge is going to connect. I send in Aurorus, and in the back, they're running an incredibly spicy pick of Beware. Honestly, with shield advantage, I should do pretty well here, because they're forced to fire off a debuffing move of Superpower if they want to do any meaningful damage. I'm firing off Weather Ball number 2. Weather Ball is going to land, getting Beware very low. Beware has a ton of energy, but I have 2 shields, so even if they double Superpower, I can very safely double shield, farm all the way down, and there's just nothing that Pidgeot can do against Aurorus. Down goes Beware, opponent sees the writing on the wall, and concedes the match. Moving into the next match, and we've got yet another mirror lead, Virizion into Virizion. As before, I'm going to stay in this matchup because I need to get some serious damage on my opponent's deer. Eventually, I can choose to switch out, but that'll mainly depend on who wins CMP here. So if they're going to fire off the Sacred Sword, I'm going to throw one more, fire off my Sacred Sword, and it ends up being a CMP tie that I win. Knowing that I win CMP here is kind of nice because that means if I want to, I can just stay in here, play out the zeros, and guarantee either switch advantage or shield advantage. So that's what I decide to do. I'm able to win CMP over their Virizion again, fire off the Sacred Sword, and Sacred Sword is going to KO. My opponent brings in Aurorus, looking for the farm down, and I die with the move, and suddenly this is turned into an absolute nightmare as Energy Lead Aurorus sweeps my backline. I will commit the shield. This is enough for the Meteor Beam, and they full send it. No baiting here from my opponent. However, I am definitely going to have to bait if I want back into this game. I'm going to bait with the Weather Ball, and I'm able to get the shield. That is big, but unfortunately, I am still behind on energy, meaning that it looks like I'm going to have to bait twice. They go for Meteor Beam again. I'm going to continue to farm. There's a little bit of visual lag, and I'm baiting with the Weather Ball, and my opponent calls it. What a read. I'm going for the Meteor Beam. They're definitely shielding this now, and I think my only win con is to basically catch a Meteor Beam onto my wall rain. So I farm up, and I predict when they're going to throw, and I'm able to fully sacrifice the wall rain. Now if I can slightly overfarm, maybe I can sweep what they have in the back, but they just have too much energy. That was very well played by my opponent, losing the lead, but getting energy on their Aurorus. It was just too much for me to handle. Dream Lead in the next match, Virizion into Obstagoon. My opponent save switches into Trevenant, and honestly, this is not a Pokemon that I've seen much of in this meta. But Trevenant is a pretty decent save switch for my opponent here, as they will be able to force shield advantage, because unfortunately this Icicle Spear is not going to be enough to KO, which means if I want to keep that alignment, which I definitely do, I will have to go down a shield. That's a bit unfortunate. I am able to get the farm down, and I should be able to hopefully reach either an Earthquake or back-to-back Icicle Spears versus the Obstagoon. In comes the Obstagoon. I'm going to fire off the back-to-back Icicle Spears, going for the first one here. This will do some solid chip damage onto the Goon. I go for the second, and my opponent catches it onto Charizard. Honestly, that is really helpful for me, because now they are pretty close to Weather Ball range. They're already below half health, so I can just fire off Weather Balls here. I don't even need to go for the more expensive Meteor Beam. My opponent is going to start shielding. I lose CMP, and this is a bit of a tough call. I know I do survive the Blast Burn, so I'm going to let that through, and then fire off another Weather Ball. This Weather Ball will get them deep into the red. My opponent is going to commit the shield here. Aurorus continuing to farm. They do have a lot of energy. Tough decision to make. Do I commit the shield? I decide to let it go, and I live on 1 HP. Aurorus able to hang on, withstanding the Dragon Claw, taking out the Charizard, and that is a good game. And we move into the final match, now one win away from Legend, picking up an incredibly good lead. Charizard save switch means an immediate Aurorus counter swap, and I'm going to shield the first move. I found that regular non-Shadow Charizards are pretty consistently going for Blast Burn, so if I'm going to commit a shield in the matchup, it makes sense to try and shield when they're going for the more expensive move. I'm going to overfarm, fire off the Meteor Beam, and grab a shield. My opponent is going to return fire with a Blast Burn, but I do survive this, so I'm going to let that go. Blast Burn not enough to KO. I'm going to farm up to the Meteor Beam and bait with the Weather Ball. This should come very close to KOing. Weather Ball gets them low. We get the farm down, and the opponent resigns the match. And that gives us the 4-1 that we need, climbing all the way up to 3011 elo. And we do successfully hit Legend rank for Season 13 of Go Battle League. All in all, I do believe this is the absolute strongest possible team you can use in the Ultra Holiday Cup. The Virizion Aurorus core is absolutely busted, with both of them having a ton of closing power, as well as especially Virizion, an insane amount of flexibility. As I mentioned, I did run this team for 7 sets, went 28-7 with the team, so managed an 80% win rate against some top tier competition en route to Legend. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is absolutely incredible. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.